Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got a big show lined up for you. Let's get right on into it. All right, folks, we're going to talk about this Harbaugh suspension for 2024. They're talking about that could be happening. Also, there is drama everywhere. I mean, Florida, Auburn, Tennessee, you name it, it's happening. Everywhere you look, it's something else. As far as Auburn's concerned, they had a nice little run. They'd won 3 games in a row. Let's see, they beat Mississippi State, they beat Vanderbilt, and they beat Arkansas. Now, granted, those are the 3 worst teams in the SEC, but they're still SEC wins. And Auburn's going to take what they can get because they got themselves bowl eligible. They've won 6 games. But they paid New Mexico State $1.8 million to come in there and get their butt whooped. Well, not only did they not get their butt whooped, they did some butt whooping. And they took out Auburn in a major way. And God, Auburn fans had to be thinking, man, we're finally coming out of this malaise, this terrible situation we're in. We've got Hugh Freeze. We're getting excited about him. And then New Mexico State comes in there and does a little wrecking crew action on you. But look, Auburn, it's going to get better. I promise you've already seen it. This whole situation you've been in, I'm going to tell you, just like I told the Michigan fans, it's not your fault.
It's not your fault.
I know.
It's not your fault.
That's right. It's not your fault. And it's going to get better. That guy knows how to win. Now, what kind of person he is, everybody's got their opinion on that one, that's for sure. But you're going to win ball games. So anyway, now let's talk about the Florida Gators. Billy Napier. Oh, my goodness. Whew, this guy. And what a bad break to have Graham Mertz get hurt in that play. And I tell you what, man, he manned up. And he actually got that first down. So if you're going to get knocked out of a game, that's the way to do it. And they're getting ready to play Florida State, who also got their quarterback knocked out, Jordan Travis. So Florida's going to have their backup quarterback, which is Max Brown. And then Florida State's got their backup, Tate, I think it's Rodman or something. So it's going to be the game of backups. And it's a huge game for Florida State. It's a huge game for Florida. State's trying to stay undefeated so they can get in the playoff. So that's a huge game for them, and that's really tough to lose your starting quarterback right at this point in time. Here they are just on the verge of the playoff. So we'll see how that plays out, but, man, that stinks. And as far as the Gators are concerned, this is a huge game for Billy Napier. He's already lost 4 in a row. If he loses the Florida State game, that's 5 in a row, and they're going to end up 5-7. If he wins this game, it'd be huge. It'd get him to 6-6. It's going to be at the Swamp. So with their quarterback being out Florida State, I would say that it's kind of a toss-up, but Florida's got their backup. And that guy played pretty good, but he's a running quarterback, and I don't know that Missouri was ready for that, and it kind of caught him off guard. So we'll see how it plays out, man. It's going to be a very interesting game, and Billy Napier needs this in the worst way. If he finishes 5-7 and doesn't go to a bowl game and finishes up with 5 straight losses, especially given how they ended last year, it's going to be tough. Now, I don't think he's going to get fired. I think it's possible. Especially, I take that back a little bit. They've already lost 3 4-star recruits. Their recruiting is really key, and it's the thing that's kept them going. If that falls apart, all bets are off. So I think he'll get another year, 1 more year, and he better go get an offensive coordinator and definitely a special teams coach. That special teams is a disaster, and I'm sorry if you're on special teams. I'm sure you're doing your best, but you need a coach. And obviously Napier can't handle all the things he's – look, Florida's not Louisiana Tech or wherever he came from. It's not the same. This is not the Sun Belt. So he needs to get a couple more coaches in there and maybe have 1 less offensive line coach. But he needs this win, something awful. So it's going to be a heck of a battle. And anytime you have 2 in-state rivalries go at it, it's an epic showdown. We're getting ready to have the same thing with South Carolina and Clemson, and South Carolina needs that win to get bowl eligible, and they barely escaped beating Kentucky, which was a huge win for Shane Beamer because he's had a terrible season. At one point he was 2-6. Then he beat a couple of real easy teams. He beat Vanderbilt and Jacksonville State, but he got a key win against Kentucky by 3 points, and that was a heck of a ball game, man. It came down to just the last few plays, and South Carolina managed to hold on at home. But look for that Clemson game to be something special because Clemson's coming in there and they're looking for revenge so bad. They're so angry about getting beat last year. They got knocked out of the playoff, part of the top 10 victories of South Carolina that magically happened, possibly due to Connor Stallions and his sign-stealing scheme. Supposedly he had reached out to some teams, so I think South Carolina might be one of them, especially given Shane Beamer's history. But anyway, look for that to be a great game. Now let's talk about Michigan and one Jim Harbaugh. And this is a story in Yahoo Sports by Gabriella Carroll. It says, would not be surprising if Michigan football's Jim Harbaugh suspended for the bulk of 2024. And it talks about how, of course, he's just been suspended the last 3 games by the Big Ten, which they finally accepted and quit trying to fight. And I think what happened was they found out the Big Ten had a ton of evidence on him.
Got the evidence. Put the evidence in the car. But put the evidence in the car.
And they just decided to back off the last minute because they didn't want to go into court and have to face all that. So they took the 3-game suspension. And then later on, they fired Chris Patridge, is one of their 10 top assistants. You know, there's like 10 that count. He was one of those guys, so he was kind of a big dog. So the whole rogue actor thing, that's all been thrown out the door. That's, nonsense. So obviously people knew. Supposedly he was destroying evidence. So that's not good, especially when the NCAA is trying to find out what's going on. And you got the FBI up there, which that's a whole different can of worms. That could be worse than any of this sign stealing stuff. And the reason this became a big deal is because Bruce Feldman, he said it would not be surprising if Jim Harbaugh could be suspended for the bulk of 2024, I'm told. And he's got a lot of sources, so it sounds like they're going to be going after him for 2024. He's also not done with the whole Burgergate, which wound up, he had all kinds of contacts during the dead period, back during the virus, and he's still in trouble for that. He accepted a 3-game suspension himself, but they wanted 4, so he's probably going to get another game for that, plus this whole sign-stealing mess. I get the feeling from what I'm hearing that NCAA is going to expedite this because this is so huge. This is such a huge scandal that I think they feel so much pressure, and I mean everybody's watching this. This is the biggest scandal we've seen in decades, and it could have an even bigger scandal with that FBI thing. I'm hearing all kinds of stuff about that. I'm not prepared to talk about that yet, but I've told you I think there's a lot more shoes that are getting ready to drop. And I told you that a few days ago when something dropped on the day that they went to court, which doesn't surprise me. You can expect all kinds of things to happen day of court because that's when all the bluffing stops and people start realizing this is getting real. But Jim Harbaugh also had something very interesting, and this is on Twitter. This is in multiple places on Twitter. This one's the Big Ten Huddle. And let's see what he had to say because he was asked about whether or not he had respect for Ryan Day.
It seems like there's always been a fair level of respect between the coaches. It's hard to determine what that is right now. What would you say is your respect level for Ryan Day and their staff?
It's all about our preparation for Ohio. The days, the minutes, the hours, everything leading up to this game. That's where our focus is. Preparing ourselves and planning, gonna practice and then execute. So, anything else is irrelevant, when you get into this kind of big game week.
Yeah, it sounds like there's not a lot of respect there for all that.
Well, that's the story of my life. No respect. No respect.
So, little Rodney Dangerfield action for Ryan Day. And, folks, we've got an epic game coming up. This Ohio State-Michigan game is going to be absolutely huge. I almost can't even explain how big a deal it is. I don't know how many people are actually going to watch it, but I'm sure it'll probably be 15 million plus. I think it's going to be the biggest game of the year, biggest game, regular season game we've seen in an incredibly long time. I know I'm going to be watching every bit of it. And I normally cover SEC, but this Michigan thing has been incredibly interesting. And the way Ohio State feels, they cannot wait for this game to happen. Beat Michigan 8 straight years and beat them handily, and then all of a sudden Connor Stallion shows up and they start getting their butt whooped 2 years in a row, even at Columbus. None of that makes sense. So we'll see how this goes. Michigan barely got past Maryland, so we'll see how it plays out. Going to be super interesting, but they will not have the signs. There's no way they will have Ohio State signs. They're going to have to play them straight up. And lastly, I'm going to talk about my Vols, and we've come off 2 really bad weeks. We found out that our 5-star quarterback, Nico, is going to be redshirted. But the one positive is he's only played in 3 games, so he can play in 1 more. Well, we've got Vanderbilt remaining, and that's obviously an easy game. And I'd say what they'll do is start Joe, but I fully expect to see Nico. I hope he gets half the plays. I hope he didn't just get thrown in the last quarter and do all that, but it's possible. Then obviously all the Tennessee fans want to see him in the bowl game. And what would be ideal is if Joe got ready for the NFL combine and focused on that, which a lot of players do nowadays, which is probably where he needs to focus, and let Nico take over and play the bowl game. That will give Nico an entire month to get ready, and he can get all the first team reps, and we can see our future quarterback play in a significant game. And he will have been at UT for a full year. He's put on 20 pounds, and we've already seen glimpses of him, and you can tell the guy's going to be something special. And for the teams that beat us this year, like I said, we're going to finish 8-4. For the Alabamas and the Georgias and Missouris and all that, we're coming for you. Don't you worry. We will be back.
I'll be back.
And we're bringing Nico with us. So don't you worry, Alabama and Georgia. Yeah, and Florida. Yeah, we're coming for you. And if you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Lets me know to continue to cover the Vols and all these other teams, the SEC, the Big Ten. I enjoy covering all this big news, and especially the coaches and that sort of stuff. If you've not subscribed, it's on your right, my left. Just hit this little button right here. I would appreciate it. Costs you nothing, helps me out. And right over here's the most recent video YouTube thinks you'll enjoy. And we'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay. And I'm actually over here in my old studio with my old computer because I had a problem with my big computer. So I'm having to use a new camera and a bunch of other stuff. But I'm working on that other computer, and I think it's about to be fixed. So anyway, we'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay. But that's why I look a little different today.